Peace. First and foremost, my lips all ashy. I wanted to just encourage those of you who wanted to get more insight into what's going on with the uprising in Baltimore to connect with me on Facebook. That's where I've been sharing a lot of my social commentary and other information in regards to that uprising following the police brutality and death of Freddie Gray at the hands of 6 Baltimore police officers. In addition, I've been sharing a lot of the commentary of my god brother Salim, who is the vice chair of the National Black United Front. He's there on the ground, and he's been sharing a lot, keeping people informed about what's going on from the perspective of independent media, which is important because this is all within the best interest of us being able to control the narrative, because the spin doctors is on hand, and they've been spinning stuff and striving to create their own narrative in regards to the events that's going on. And that's why I specifically use the word uprising as well. I'm not using the word riot. I'm not using the word any of that. It's an uprising. It's an insurrection. Secondly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about global white supremacy and institutionalized racism, to give those of you a little bit more context to some of the underpinnings of what's going on in regards to not only what you see in Baltimore, but what you saw in Ferguson, what you saw in '92 with the LA riots, what you see globally, wherever there is a proximity or a power dynamic between so-called white and black. And I think that's important to understand. When people consider white supremacy or being a white supremacist, the first image that comes up in people's mind is either somebody wearing a sheet with a dunce hat, or some big brolic bald-headed white dude that's in San Quentin prison with a whole bunch of tats on him that's screaming racial epithets. And because you see those images of white supremacy being put out there in the media, you have a lot of people who buy into a white supremacist mentality and status quo that don't fit those descriptions. You got white and black people alike that are invested in the same supremacist attitude, mentality, and status quo. When you consider white supremacy, it's the idea that white is superior. And that superiority is based upon 3 basic components. That they're superior because of color, they're superior because of culture, and they're superior because of class. In terms of color, there's some people that just believe that white is right. And the closer you look to white, you're more attractive, you're better. You have some people who believe that white culture is superior because they look at Greek culture, which is the watered down and distorted expression of Kemetic culture. They look at Greek culture as the hallmark of Western civilization. And since we live in America and that's the first world, white culture is higher. They don't look at black, indigenous, classical culture and civilization as the true hallmark or the highest expression of civilization and culture on the planet. So you have some people that buy into that too. They think that white is better because of their idea of culture. And then you have people that think white is better because of class. And in terms of class, I'm talking about, the upper class, or people who are on top, and then people who are on the bottom. And when I talk about people on the top and people on the bottom, I'm talking about people who have a dominant control of the institutions, the economy, as well as the natural resources. So you have some people, white and black, that believe that white people are superior because when they look around the world, and they see this global minority in control of the institutions, the economy, as well as the natural resources, that they're better and they're superior, and they do everything in their power to identify with that dominant class. So that is what white supremacy truly is. It's just the idea and the belief that white is superior based upon color, based upon culture, and based upon class. And you have not only people who are classified as white, but you have black and brown people who believe that and buy into that. So anybody can fit that description. It's not just somebody wearing a sheet, and it's not just some big brolic white dude that's bald headed with tats all over him screaming racial epithets in San Quentin prison. There are many people that belong to a system and uphold a status quo that is based upon white being superior because of color or aesthetics, because of the idea of culture, and because of the idea of class. Now, institutionalized racism is basically the function of global white supremacy. So in order to uphold that status quo of being superior based upon color, based upon culture, and based upon class, you have to have a systematic way in which that idea or mentality operates. And that is what institutionalized racism actually is. It is the function of global white supremacy. Now, naturally, the question arises is, how did things get that way? Because anywhere you go on the planet Earth where you see people who are classified as white in proximity to people who are black and brown, it is that class of people who are defined as white who have dominant control of the resources, of the institutions, and the economy. It doesn't matter if you go to any American city, wherever you see that dynamic, you're going to see a minority of whites, or even in an area where they are the majority. They're going to have control of the institutions. They're going to have control of the economy, and they're going to have control of the natural resources. If you go to so-called Latin American countries, you're going to see people who are white or who look closer to white on top, and you're going to see the indigenous or the first world people or the black people on the bottom. You go to India, you're going to see the people on top that are white or identify with being white, or the ancestors of the Caucasians or the Aryans on top, and you're going to see the black indigenous first world people of that place on the bottom. You go to the so-called Middle East, same thing. You go to South Africa, same thing. 90% black, but you're going to see a minority white on top, black on the bottom. That is a global phenomena that defies all laws of probability around the planet Earth. So how do you actually explain that? Because it's not natural, it's not organic, it's mechanical, so there must be some machination or some mechanics that make that actually possible, because it defies all laws of probability. So you have three basic scenarios. You have some people who believe that that's just a natural order of things. White people belong on top. They are superior because of their color, because of their culture, because of their sense of class. And you have white and black and brown people who buy into that and believe it. The second scenario is you have some people that believe that black and brown people are inherently inferior, which means we're dumb, we're not hard workers, we're not intelligent, we're not capable, and we don't need to be in a dominant position or to have any kind of control over any kind of the institutions or the economy or the natural resources. So that is the other scenario. And you have white people and black and brown people who believe that too. And then the third scenario is there must be some machination in place or systematic way in which the global minority, aka white people, have been operating as colonialists throughout the planet Earth that has ensured their ability to maintain a dominant position over the global majority. And if that is plausible, which I think is, now you have to ask further questions. How, Sway? How? How do they get in that position? Is it because the majority or black and brown people just said, well, here, you're better, you're smarter, you're more intelligent, you look better, your culture is better, we're going to put you on top and we'll support you. Some people believe that black and brown people just gave it up because it's a natural order of things. Some people believe that white people as colonialists and imperialists have taken those resources, have established those institutions and those economies to reinforce their dominant position and status quo. I don't know. You research it for yourself and figure out, what do you think is actually going on? What is the machination? What are the mechanics of this? And that's when you begin to start to understand what institutionalized racism is. It is the function and the modus operandi of global white supremacy. And the more you understand those things, the more everything else makes sense, or you have the proper context of seeing not only race relations here in America, but also those same type of relations or power dynamics wherever you go throughout the planet Earth, because it's the same exact story. White on top, black on the bottom. And like I said, it defies all natural laws of probability. So it's not possible for that to organically happen. There has to be some machination in place. And until you start examining that machination or the mechanics of that, then you begin to understand what global white supremacy is. And also, it puts you in a position where now you can make an educated decision whether or not you want to reinforce that status quo and uphold it, or you can dismantle that status quo and to be invested in a new system of things. And that is a decision that you have to make on your own. And that decision is going to be different for people who classify themselves as white and people who are black and brown within this society. In terms of those who classify themselves as white, because they have the connection for the complexion and the complexion for the connections, there's a lot of privileges that you're going to have to give up. There's a lot of things that you're going to have to make a decision on and say, you know, if you're going into a restaurant and you see that they're giving you seats before a black couple that was sitting there, you're going to have the courage and the integrity to step up and say, well, you know, I saw them sitting here first. You know, are they taken care of? Some of y'all wouldn't do that. And I'm not just saying white people, but black and brown people too. Because a lot of people don't want to give up privileges, even if it means making things more equitable or fair. You know, and that is the actual truth. There's a lot of people that don't want to be fair on that kind of level. And those are some hard decisions that people are going to have to make. You know, in terms of people who classify themselves as white, who have the complexion that looks like the dominant society. And that, you know, you may be a poor white person, a working class, or, you know, but that still doesn't mean that you don't have the potential to represent the dominant class, because you look just like the dominant class. You're going to have to do everything in your power to not identify with them, even if that means not working in your family business that's deliberately segregating or undermining or doing everything to create disparities amongst black and brown people in a community. And that's some hard decisions to make. In terms of black and brown people, we have to be invested in our own self, in terms of economic empowerment, in terms of education, in terms of making sure that we are able to bring ourselves to a level of social economic equality in order to bring about a new system of things. The last thing I wanted to talk about is, I've been seeing a lot of people talking about Baltimore, talking about Ferguson, talking about this, that, and the third, talking. In a capitalistic society, money talks and bullshit walks. And if you don't see people who are actually financially invested in solutions, they're just talking. They're no different than a person that's just upholding the status quo. So if you hear people talking about, yeah, this, that, and the third, and they're making big, you know, great arguments about this is what it is, this is what it is, ask them, okay, what are you actually doing financially to support what it is you're saying? You know, and that should translate into investing in lobbyist groups so that they can get legislation changed that criminalizes black youth. Are they doing that? Are they angel investors for black and brown business owners so that they can control their own commerce and commercial real estate and residences in their own community? Are they doing that? Are they invested in education? Are they doing this, that, and the third? How are they spending money when it comes to propagating their message and the mission that they say they're aligning themselves with? That lets you know where a person really stands. So with that being said, this was inspiring, it was empowering, it was educating, and gave those of you a little bit more insight into what global white supremacy is and how institutionalized racism functions in relation to global white supremacy. Global white supremacy is not just some person wearing a sheet or some brolic, bald-headed, you know, white dude with tats all over him in San Quentin prison. It's a mentality based upon the idea and the belief that white is superior because of color, because of culture, and because of class. And you have not only white people that buy into that bullshit, but you have black and brown people doing it too. And if we really want to bring about some level of freedom, justice, and equality, we have to be totally invested in a new system of things. Peace.